So last year, I opened what might be the last game store I'll ever open. And here's 3 reasons why I may never open a retail game store again. To give you some background, my name's Travis and I opened Kingslayer Comics back in 2015. And about a year before that, I'd started an e-commerce business in the same general retail hobby space. From that point on, Kingslayer Comics evolved into Kingslayer Games, very TCG focused in Magic and Pokemon. And from there, branched out into two more versions of Kingslayer, one in Oceanside and one in Lake Forest. Prior to doing retail with Kingslayer, I had worked 8 years in retail at big box stores and went into sales and some other paths in my career. At one point, I wanted to have at least 10 stores, and I measured my success in business and in my career against this idea that I needed to have 10 or kind of make up a number, make up some sort of pivot. But there was definitely a time where I wanted to have stores in multiple states in the southwestern United States, and 10 would give me this number of like satisfaction. And it's nice to have, good to have goals. As I was expanding over the course of the last 3 years, going from, because it's about 3.5 years now, going from a single store location in retail to 3 stores, created a lot of opportunities and a lot of problems that needed to be solved, which I knew would happen. Part of opening the first expansion store in Oceanside, I knew it was going to create some challenges that I couldn't predict. I knew there was going to be some things that came up that there's no way I could have planned for. And that was part of the fun of opening a second retail store was, there's going to be some fun hurdles over here, and let's find out what they are. And Oceanside was relatively close to home. Our Fountain Valley store is about an hour away from there, so it wasn't like I was going out of state, and it was localized. So more on that down the road. But the purpose of this today was really specifically highlighting these 3 reasons why I will stop opening game stores, with an asterisk. So things can change, and you never quite know where the next pivot will take us, or what the industry will do, or what the economy will do. But at least for now, I can confidently say I don't expect to open any more stores, any more game stores, because of what I've learned over the course of the last 10 years of being in this industry. So the first reason why I won't open any more game stores is that personal relationships and personal connections are so much harder to maintain as a single owner. So my wife is very helpful in the business and manages the company with me, but she and I manage this company of 3 stores and this really large community across the Southwest and beyond. And maintaining personal connections when we had one location, one store that I was in every day was much easier, was completely manageable. I'm there all the time. People could come in and say hi. 2 stores created a new problem where I was always at the new store and not so often at the previous one. But for our Fountain Valley location, I had been there for 5+ years, 6+ years. So I had tons of time to develop these connections. So even if I wasn't there for much, even if I took a year out of that store and wasn't really there was so much groundwork that had been kind of laid for building those relationships and that staff and all that. So 2 stores wasn't really as much of a problem as it was to go to 3. So going to 3 stores, and this Oceanside store had been open for only 2 years, and I had been there a fair amount. But then to go to and do this again and do a 3rd store, which was a much more intensive build out. The whole process for that store was quite arduous just to get that thing open off the ground. It wasn't a turnkey operation, and developing relationships in that store was a lot of fun. I learned how to play Warhammer, and that community there is extremely special. But there's only so many times that you can divide having that like personal connection and that personal experience with customers and staff before it loses an amount of the ability to be genuine and, hey, I'll see you next week, doesn't really work. It doesn't really work in that same way. So, and that really spurred the interest for me to jump into like a live experience. So to do the Kingslayer Games live on our YouTube channel and on Twitch. and now on TikTok as well, and really allows me to still have that personal connection and that hang time with the community and with the staff in a way that is more, being able to be live in multiple places and multiple times has been a lot of fun. So reason number one is personal connections are really, really hard to maintain. So expanding beyond 3 stores, it further divides that ability to have those personal connections as a single owner operation. I think there are ways that it can work over time. I think potentially with the right promotions and the right internal growth, but that's reason number one. Reason number two is that scaling intentionally with retail requires an immense amount of sacrifice. When you do that, you're splitting your best team members into different directions. Your family life is going to get is much more harder to maintain when you're building anything new, and financially, the cost of expansion, it really eliminates the ability for you to take any sort of like substantial earnings from the role. Like we've been expanding so much in the last 3 years that it completely it's hundreds of thousands of dollars to do a build out in the way that we do them now, and even that is like pretty lean, I think, compared to a lot of build outs for new stores. But it does mean it's not this getting into the business of running a card shop. If you're getting into it because you feel like it's going to provide like insane financial freedom where you've got millions of dollars of net earnings every year, those are going to be for the few. Like that's really, really difficult to accomplish that unless you're one of the really, really big guys and you probably have partnerships, and going from zero to that is insanely difficult. And what we do is we operate in like this, kind of middle class lifestyle. But we have, the freedom and flexibility of being your own boss, but it's still like really hard and stressful and difficult and has good months and bad months. But the financial impact of, if we were to open a 4th store right now, it really ends up actually slowing down our growth of our team in a lot of ways because we can't invest in them. So scaling with retail, scaling intentionally with retail requires a lot of sacrifice for the customer, for family life, and financially. And that's another reason why I am going to stop opening game stores. Number 3, and this one is probably the most fulfilling, but I accomplished what I set out to do. That's something that when I started my business 10 years ago and we got into cards, that was, it was a pivot behind another pivot of another business. And I've mentioned I talk about this on our stream that we do weekly, about how the business started, and there's videos on our channel that kind of speak to that. But I didn't on purpose try to open a card shop. I did not wake up one day and say, day 0, I did not want to open a card shop, and now day 2, I did want to open a card shop. I opened a comic book store that pivoted into cards, and and while I still had a full-time job, and I found a way to make that work even beyond my full-time job. So when I left a company I was working at, then I got fired, and at that point I made this leap of faith to say, Kingslayer was around for 3 years at that point, maybe 4. Need to check the tapes. And so Kingslayer had its legs at that point, but it was being very heavily subsidized by my income for my job. But that was the moment where I decided to, okay, you know what, this is going to be my full-time income. I have to make this work. And the card shop business and my life in cards really became one, and made it work. And I've got a family of 3 kiddos and my wife, and we found a way to make, having a business in the trading card industry in the United States in, the last 5 years or 10 years, we made that work. And the next step was, let's keep this baby rolling, and let's open a second location. And initially, as you may have heard in some of my stories in the past, in past iterations, that was Arizona was my first place I was going to go for a second store. I thought that would be really badass. We're going out of state, folks. We're going to be a interstate company. And then that didn't make any sense. Luckily, I listened to some folks that were wiser than me, and I did more local. And and went to Oceanside, and we made Oceanside work. And it's been there for 3 years now, and it's got an amazing community and it's got an amazing team. And the next step was, okay, can we do that? Can we catch lightning in a bottle 3 times? And the third store we put closer to home. We put in between the other 2, and that store is phenomenal, and the community is amazing. And it hit its 1 year last couple months ago. And now we have 3 stores that will soon, Fountain Valley will be hitting its 10-year anniversary in September. Oceanside has now been there for 3 years, and Lake Forest just hit 1 year. And I've really, accomplished what I set out to do, which was, now that I inherited kind of this TCG business and learned that industry, was, can I scale it and can it be done well? And that part has worked. So, and what's next is really, I think the fun part for me is always every year, every month, every day, looking around, as when you're a CEO and an owner of a company that's got, we have 25 staff members now, or 24. It's what's the most impactful thing I could be doing to enhance customer experience, make my staff feel heard, and support them, develop their career paths, and that's more in line with what I work on now, which is so much different. It's not playing card games. It's how do we make the events engaging for our community? How do we make the career paths at Kingslayer compelling? And now what I've been doing a lot since January is making a live experience for our community, so they can see me and talk to me about their hobbies, and they can feel more connected to their hobbies through broadcasting our local in-store events. So we have primarily focused on Lorcana and One Piece, but we've broadcast a lot of different games in the shops on our Twitch channel, on YouTube and TikTok, and shameless plug. And that ends up being a really, really awesome way for us to get more eyes on Kingslayer, on the brand, and teach more people about the hobby. I've had many stories, many instances of people scrolling through their feed and finding us live talking about Lorcana, and me teaching them how to play the game just through being live. And oftentimes those folks aren't local to us, but they're national customers, and teaching them how to play these games and these hobbies that we love is great for the ecosystem. And so I've really enjoyed, sharing my knowledge about opening card shops over the last 10 years and talking about the hobbies and connecting with our community existing at our 3 stores and beyond. That part's been really cool. And so I'm excited to continue on that for the rest of this year and next year. And instead of trying to be, the most, the biggest chain of card shops in the land, I think it's actually more valuable for us to really focus on our staff and making compelling options for them to stick around and have careers at Kingslayer, and to make the folks that are in our 3 communities really prioritize them and focus on making the best experience in our stores for them. And you do inadvertently end up selling a little bit of your soul when you're opening more stores, because you're chasing that rush and that sense of accomplishment by just having more stores. And I think that there's times when that might make sense, especially if all of our teams are promoted and healthy and itching for more growth. I think there may be a time where my team might come to me and say, "Hey, we need more growth. We need another store so that we can keep our career paths going in the right place, and so that these staff members that are full time, that want growth opportunities, can realize them." And that might be something that we would look at, but it's more important for me to iterate and to make this experience better for those that are here. The closer that we end up being to our community, I strongly feel the closer they are to the hobbies that they love. They come in because they're attached to some brand or some IP, or they have some affinity to some game that we support, but they end up finding, that third space or that place of community and meeting folks that have shared interests, and being able to socialize in person in 2024 and beyond, and enjoying that space with like-minded folks is just really special. And I think it's something that we want to make sure we get right before continuing to scale. So I'm just really stoked for 2025 and expanding our content horizon with live, with long form, with short form video. And yeah, like I said earlier, my name's Travis. I think I probably said that in the beginning, but I am live. every single week, usually always Thursdays, and sometimes earlier in the weeks as well. So it's as many as like 4 times a week, depending on what's going on. I'm live hanging out. You can come and talk to me. My email address is below. If you're like a store owner or you're thinking about getting into the business of running your own card shop, I love having talks with folks. I do it for free. I can set up a 30-minute call on Discord if you're like, oh, I might want to open a card shop in my area. I think it's really fun, and it kind of like keeps me grounded with that space and that moment in time when you're trying to decide if running and being an entrepreneur in cards is the right thing for you and your family and your situation. So I do that for free. Just send me an email. I'll set it up. I actually have a call this upcoming Friday, and looking forward to just kind of developing those folks that are excited about opening game stores. Because there's definitely a path that works, especially if you only want to have one. Despite three's a lot, and we've got a really awesome team to support that. But there's 3,000 plus game stores in the U.S. and it's a really awesome time to be in TCGs from a community standpoint or a staff standpoint or ownership. And I talk about that a lot on this channel and my personal one. So, but yeah, thanks for hanging out. I'm going to be putting out more of this type of content just because I have the ability to do it. I'm live anyways in my studio, so we'll keep cranking. And I appreciate your time. Have a good one. Be good to each other.